Hey guys, I'm Coach Amy. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a PhD student of integrative and functional nutrition and a holistic health coach who specializes in weight loss with pre-diabetic clients. I'm also the founder of Culinary Medicine for Everyday Living YouTube channel. And if you haven't checked that out, go ahead and check it out. I'll link it below. Uh, Over the last 10 years, I've worked in various capacities of health and wellness, but above all else, I've taken the journey of being unhealthy to where I am today. And I understand what it takes, the shifts in mindset and the dedication that it takes to really make that turnaround. But I also understand how wonderful our bodies are intended to feel. And that is why I'm so passionate about what I do. And today's discussion is the last in a series where I've been covering different dietary approaches to weight loss. I've looked at low calorie, low carb, low fat, high protein, Mediterranean, and intermittent fasting. All of these are very popular approaches that you read and you hear about. And my intention of this series is for you to have evidence-informed takeaways based on the research and practical recommendations, hopefully, that make sense. And today is the big day where I sort of just put it all together. I have a lot to cover in putting it all together, trying to hit the highlights. So I just want to get started. So I'm going to start off with the low-calorie approach because first off, it's generally accepted rule that you have to have somewhat of a negative energy balance to lose weight. However, as I've mentioned throughout this series, the calories in, calorie out approach does not always work, especially in the long term. And that's why I wanted to start with the low calorie approach because of that. And the reason why this approach generally has been proven to only work in the short term, it is effective to just count your calories. But there's a reason that if that's all that you're doing and you're not strategizing with these other approaches that I'm going to be covering, there's a reason that you have limited success and then a rebound weight gain. And that is because A, our bodies are built to survive. So what happens when we restrict our calories over a 3 to 6 month period is our body begins to adapt, go into survival mode, upregulate our hormones that make us hungry, down-regulate the hormones that make us feel full. And in addition to this change in your hormones, you're also losing a little bit of muscle mass. It's inevitable that you're going to lose muscle in a weight loss journey when you're restricting calories. And not only that, as you lose weight, your body shrinks too, which lowers your metabolism. So those are two factors lowering your metabolism. You're losing muscle mass and you're also shrinking, which is going to cause you to burn less calories. And as that happens, some research shows that the increase in your hunger hormones is several-fold larger. It's been estimated in research. All of this research has been linked, by the way, in the previous talks. If you want a reference for those of my science people who want to go back and look at the references that I'm talking about. So that's the trifecta. You've got this you've got your body's survival mechanism working against you. You're going to get hungry as your metabolism decreases. So with that said, let's just jump right into the different types of low-calorie diets and how they work. The first one is the formula diet, also known as a very low-calorie diet. Again, this is one that is used in a weight loss clinic by a physician, and it's generally used prior to gastric surgery to prepare the body, shrink the liver, and prepare a patient for that gastric surgery. So I don't want to spend too much time there. The conventional low-calorie diet is where you're counting your calories, looking at how much you're eating, how much you're exercising. The typical approach is you're reducing your calories by 5 to 750 calories a day, which usually equals about a pound to pound and a half loss a week, knowing that that healthy rate of weight loss is generally 1 to 2 pounds a week. That 5 to 750 calories a day reduction will get you there. The drawback to that approach is exactly what I already mentioned and opened with, is that your body begins to adapt. The weight loss slows down. You hit a plateau, and often you end up having a rebound effect when your hormones start to shift to go into survival mode, and then you get hungry and you can't maintain the sustainability of that calorie restriction is difficult. However, in that article that I reference in this, it does talk about that if you can make it past a year to 2 years, which that is about a 20% to one third of people can actually make it for 3 years, about 20% for a year. And so sustaining that is not always a sustainable approach. So again, the studies are mixed when it comes to a low carbohydrate diet versus a low fat diet. So let's look at these two diets, starting with a focus primarily on your low carbohydrate approach. So when the studies, again, I said, are mixed, some studies show that there are no significant differences between a low carb approach or a low fat approach, and that when you're looking at a 6-month period, a short-term study, the weight loss, some studies show, are about equal. However, there are some studies, more than not, to show that low carbohydrate approach sometimes in some studies does show to be a superior or have a more significant amount of weight loss than a low fat approach. But again, there's a few things to keep in mind here when you're looking at a low carbohydrate approach. When you're reducing your carbohydrates, you got to replace those calories. It's generally fat that you're replacing because your protein intake is usually anywhere from 15 to 25, and then at the top 30%. I'm going to get into that. So you're looking at a higher fat diet when you're looking at a low carb. So if you have hypercholesterolemia, and that is the genetic mutation that causes you to have high cholesterol, you do better with more carbohydrates, and possibly a low fat approach would be more suited to you. However, there's evidence mounting in support that ketogenic diets are being used, again, therapeutically in a clinical setting to completely reverse type 2 diabetes. And the reason that is because you are working with your insulin response. Insulin is going back to the fat storage hormone. So when you reduce those carbohydrates, you are affecting your metabolic factors, including the insulin response, more rapidly, which is also why you have a more rapid rate of weight loss with a low carb approach. So those are some things to keep in mind. Again, bioindividuality plays into whether a low carb approach is right for you or not. And then the other option would be a low fat approach, where you're reducing the amount of fat. So a low fat approach, we've heard about that for as long as we can remember. And that's because fat calories have more than double the amount per gram. And so it's really easy to overeat fat. And then you're in that positive energy balance where you're going to be gaining weight. And so you have to be really careful with a high fat approach for that reason. So that is why low fat diets, a lot of people prefer that approach. It's easier to count those calories and feel full. Again, a low-fat approach is recommended for the people who have the genetic mutation, the familial hypercholesterolemia, and again, the methods are completely going to be, the approach is going to be individual to you, low-fat or low-carb. So that brings me to the next high-protein approach. So the big takeaway about a high protein approach is that we're not looking at any more than 30% of your daily calories from protein. Any more of that can be really taxing on your kidneys. And so a high protein approach is usually looked at between 20 to 30% of your calories, which is also why it's often used in conjunction with maybe a low fat or a low carb, depending on where you are and what your needs are in your body. And a higher protein diets, though, the good things about adding this approach to your strategy is that some studies have shown that a high protein diet facilitates a significant amount of weight loss over a low protein or a high carbohydrate approach. Also, uh, high protein, there's some studies to show that it stimulates muscle uh, muscle synthesis. So in other words, it stimulates your body to make more muscle, especially when used in line with exercise, regular exercise program. And so in that regard, by you can counteract that muscle wasting that is inevitable by using exercise and increasing your protein intake. And so, but here's the thing, there are some detrimental studies surrounding high protein diets, especially when it comes to animal protein. So you want to pay attention to where your sources of protein are coming from. Quality matters when it comes to protein. To really dig in, go back to the protein talk that I did. But overall, plant-based proteins, while they're not complete, when you eat a variety of plants, you are able to meet your protein and get complete proteins. And they promote a reduction in obesity, whereas animal proteins, especially red meat, have been linked to both obesity and heart disease. So you want to be, a prudent approach to doing a high protein diet would be, if you're going to have up to that 30% of protein, to counteract that muscle wasting that you have when you diet, including exercise into the routine. It would be prudent to replace some of those refined carbohydrates that we talked about in the low fat approach. And really reduce some saturated fat, focusing on lean protein sources or plant protein sources. And also would like to just mention here, fish is recommended around twice a week to get your EPA and DHA. And those are the fatty acids that have so many balancing omega-3 effects in your body and are really good for your brain. So fish twice a week. And other sources would be chicken or other birds, or lean game meats would be ideal, or naturally raised animals. Again, go back to that protein video, watch that one. But it's important to keep in mind that when you're looking at low carbohydrate, a low protein or a high protein or low fat, like that macronutrient ratio is going to be individual to your needs, and that can even change over time as well. And that's why working with a trained practitioner and a coach, in addition to getting group support, are all recipes for success. But let me just move right into the next one, the Mediterranean diet. We've heard a lot about the Mediterranean diet, and it's the most researched dietary approach. And there's really not much negative to say about the Mediterranean diet. The only ongoing research is really integrating it into different cultures, because it does stem from the Mediterranean. And so being able to integrate that into different cultures is of interest, because if you're not culturally open to the foods, you're not going to eat them. And the best dietary approach is going to be one that you can stick to and that you enjoy and that makes you feel good. However, going back to the Mediterranean diet, the biggest takeaways for this one is that, again, it's the most researched diet. Not only does it have potential weight loss benefits, there's lots of studies surrounding that, but many other studies about the other many protective health benefits in a Mediterranean diet. Why is that? What does it focus on? The Mediterranean diet is focused on plant-based foods primarily, fruits, vegetables, legumes. Only a moderate intake of fish, again, twice a week is what has been recommended. Minimal amount of dairy products, very low intake of red meat or red wine. And herbs and spices are also used in abundance. Again, going back to those functional foods, getting vitamins, minerals, and those antioxidant and pro-oxidant, the ones that really support your body to be more resilient in the face of oxidation and stress in your body. And so we're going to move right in. The next one that we talked about was intermittent fasting. However, again, as I pointed out yesterday when I talked about that, intermittent fasting is generally the term that we hear, but we're really often learning about intermittent energy restriction, because intermittent fasting is generally where you fast for at least 24 hours. And it's not sustainable. However, this term is used often as sort of, they just kind of blanket everything under this umbrella of intermittent fasting. But what we really hear about more often is really in the nutrition world known as intermittent energy restriction, which means you are having periods of where you restrict your calories and then periods where you just eat with no restriction. And keep in mind that all of these approaches that I'm talking about are centered around whole foods, no processed foods, right? Minimize those sugars or completely omitting the added sugars, refined sugars, and the refined grains. Choosing whole grains, whole foods, as close to the source as possible. So again, a lot of people tend to go with that intermittent energy restriction where they may be doing a 12 to 18 hour window, or they may have alternating days where every other day you're restricting your calories by 60 to 70%. And that is the one that's really more sustainable. But there's a lot of risks, and this is highly controversial. And so it's really important to speak with someone knowledgeable before you set out on an intermittent fasting journey because of the risks. So we're looking at the risk versus benefits. There are strategies to mitigate the risk that you can incorporate. And it's important to get that guidance and really understand, because if you don't do this right, you can really mess up your metabolism and lose protein and affect your metabolic factors and have more of a health risk rather than a health benefit. So keeping in mind, guys, those are the strategies we talked about. It is complex. However, once you start to learn how to implement these strategies and learn to listen to your body's cues, learn what they mean nutritionally. What is your body trying to tell you? Tuning into those messages from your body's cravings are messages. I did last year, I did a whole class about cravings, and that is on my YouTube coaching channel. Anyway, long-term success usually centers around getting support from a practitioner, dietitian, and a coach. Also, a group support, having that support of peers, people who are in this journey with you, is all factors that play into losing weight and keeping it off. And they're also now looking at physical activity. Used to be considered secondary to diet. It's coming up for long-term success. When we look at the National Weight Loss Registry of the people who have lost weight and kept it off, the people who are having success more often than not are regularly exercising and keeping up that routine. So, and that leads me to what I'll be getting into next week. Next week, I want to touch on the different exercise strategies and the metabolic responses within your body, and why different types of exercise have different types of benefits and why a combination is important. But most importantly, finding the right mix is the key thing to success when it comes to exercise. So I want to move in from dietary approaches to really your physical activity approaches to support your journey and weight loss. And guys, if you've enjoyed what you've learned and you're interested in learning more or just having that consultation, reach out to me. Send me a private message and I would love to have a chat. You can, if you have any questions, you can even comment with your questions below or send a private message if you don't want that public. And thank you for being here. The next 2 days, I will be doing Facebook Lives, but I most likely will be pulling from some research that I'm reading for my schoolwork. I am in grad school and I have some catching up to do on some reading. So over the weekend, though, I will plan out the series on exercise approaches to weight loss. The next 2 days will be grab bag, whatever Amy is studying in grad school. Thank you for being here. And guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.